My name is Kathy Douglas. I am a Calgary artist, born in Toronto, Ontario in the mid-1950s. I grew up in the days of Elvis, early NASA rocketry, and the wondrous technological change that keeps us all very busy. My father was a violent alcoholic who molested, beat, and tormented his own family. My first painting, entitled Unique, for me comes from a place of absolute darkness. Most of my memories of my childhood were violent ones, symbolized by the red and black hands. My child symbolized by a blood-weeping yin-yang, enveloped by all any young child knows, supposedly two loving parents. Two loving parents can bring a love-filled heart, immense joy, good memories, and so much more, or they can be an absolute horror. I would like to think that my childhood was somewhere in between, as I had an exceptional mother, Vinette, who died from encephalitis when she was only 47 years young. In part, I dedicate this film to her because she taught me how to survive the horrors of my father. She loved me and gave me the gifts of hope and faith. My first glow-in-the-dark painting, called Spacity, was a work on 4 panels that took me several hundred hours to complete. I had run out of white paint to use for the stars and took my young daughter Rain with me to purchase more. Amazingly bright at 6 years old, Rain tugged at me for several minutes to use the paint she found on her level of the shelves for the stars. When I finally took notice, I had to agree. Glow-in-the-dark paint would be perfect for the stars. I also dedicate this film to my wonderful daughter Rain for teaching me to be a better mother and for loving me so very much in spite of my flaws. During a therapy session, I discovered, like most abuse survivors, a coping mechanism, as it were, that I had built a wall around me. When asked to describe the wall, I found that there were no corners and it was a very high wall. It was a therapist who said it was a well, so I spent several more hundred hours painting my wall, a very deep and dry well. In the 1990s, the Canadian government commissioned a panel to report on the violence against women in Canadian society. The report, in part, found that 98% of women held in Canadian prisons were abused as children. Marlene Moore is among the most famous of them, and sadly she took her own life while being so wrongfully imprisoned. A chapter of the Elizabeth Fry Society asked me to depict what being in prison might be like for any woman having suffered far more than myself. So I added tall black bars to my wall. Imprisonment simply serves no purpose. These women are mentally ill and should be treated with gentleness and kindness. The E. Fry Society were unhappy with the depiction and asked me to add hope. Hope to me is the freedom to walk with nature, to see the well from another perspective, plants with flowers, butterflies, and a hawk to connect the bottom of the well to the outside world. I had failed miserably as several years later I found the painting had been only displayed on the E. Fry Society's wall all of 4 months. The painting had spent several years dumped into a closet. As you can see, the frame has warped and the canvas was damaged. I then painted my depiction of myself down at the bottom of the well. I never finished the little girl in the painting, as I have always felt that I was never finished as a child. I felt so much lacking in my life. I always wanted more, to the point of exhausting my therapist. The bricks faced by the little girl down the wall were painted with a granite stone acrylic paint, giving it a real texture, and the mortar filled with glow-in-the-dark paint. The first time I looked at my little girl at night, feelings of loneliness and abandonment came flooding back to me. I cried for hours as the painting captured how I felt. A lady from a church came to visit me one day and thought the painting was too negative. She was almost offended by it, thought the nudity of the child was pornographic. I was really hurt by this assessment. Then I discovered that this little girl in the painting, sitting on her feet, was praying, and her prayers were being answered with light. Hope! How wonderful! She is seldom in the darkness. It is good to create from hope. One day, while out for a walk, I saw two young ladies with their dogs. One dog had a knapsack on his back. I thought it was cute, and just getting into digital photography, thought I might try to grab a picture. The girls led their dogs to their front porch, and I asked one of the girls, could I take a picture of the dogs, and she eagerly said, sure. Just as I pressed the shutter, the other dog barked as he jumped down, startling the other girl and myself. I wasn't used to the delay after pressing the shutter button, but yet found it advantageous as I had a very quick chance to reset my aim when the camera actually took the shot. The photograph was just precious, with the illusion that the dog was balancing on one of the flower pots. I found a piece of wood that looked like someone was making a drawer, and it ended up tossed out in the garbage. I had just gotten a rotary tool and wanted to see if I could create an etching, a wash, and glow-in-the-dark paint. It felt good to create something so positive, so real. So I tried something else that is real. I don't feel that this painting is finished, but it looks interesting enough. I haven't made my mind up about it. I just like peacocks, and I guess I wanted to continue in this eye motif that I seem to have, but my depictions haven't always been this serene. I was so broken-hearted when my mother took ill and died. She had a wonderful new husband, a better life, and all that was taken away from her by an infected mosquito. I watched as her life and her soul slowly drifted away from all of us who loved her. Having worked so many years at the Canadiana Motel in Scarborough, Ontario, my mother had many, many friends. Her funeral was packed with people, and flowers covered every inch of her final contact with us. Before they closed her casket, I placed a rose in her hand. I was shocked that it was more difficult than I had planned. I cried when a thorn pricked her thumb, as if I hurt her. How can you let someone go you loved so much? Life is unfair, and it took me 14 years to let her go. During that time, I was on a voyage of discovery, experiencing the heights of happiness with the birth of my children, and the depths of despair when I lost one of my children about 10 weeks before his birth. Having a daughter a year later brought me the greatest joy and a heavier laundry basket. When lifting the laundry basket out of the car, I heard a rip and felt the tear. An inguinal hernia was the result. When the doctor operated on me while I was awake, he was in a hurry. He quickly trimmed a nerve that he thought insignificant. He butchered me, ripping away at my sexuality. I could no longer be intimate with my husband. I was plunged once again into the depths of despair. I was lost in a deep tunnel. But look, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I keep learning about the structures that allow the abuse of women and children to continue. I want so very much for it all to come to an end. After years of therapy, I finally discover myself. I had to do my own research at the University of Toronto Medical Library to determine my injuries. I also learned that because I am right-handed, with the injury occurring to the right side of my body, that I could train the left side of my body to have sensations. After years of self-therapy, I awakened the sensations in the left side of my body that have some very interesting side effects with the increased use of the right or creative side of my brain. Out of suffering came these amazing creations. The differences of perceptions. Not only is there hope, but there is a God as well. Out of the darkness, I believe that in the light there is truth, and where there is truth, there will always be light.